is your feeling at the moment when looking at 2023 and the game industry itself, the things that happens to a lot of the companies, not only the game development companies, but also, let's say, Unity, Epic Games, but also the games that has been released. What is your general take of 2023 so far?
Oh man, it's like this year is pretty stacked, both when it comes to like industry news and video games that are coming out, and it's kind of hard to really close it out in one paragraph in one sentence, because it's like, you've got big wins like Baldur's Gate 3, you've got
absolutely
those I wouldn't call it big losers, but Starfield situation, and it's like it's a really big game and a lot of people are liking it, but yeah, I don't feel so great about it. There's also a recent like wave of layoffs in different companies like Epic. I think they fired like 16% of their staff, mostly
900 people.
Yeah, mostly QAs, people working on Fortnite and stuff like that. Their core engine team is still intact, but those are really big layoffs. And right now we are facing another round of layoffs, and another company selling their IPs, Embracer Group, the guys behind Gearbox Software, and they were on a buying spree, buying all different kinds of companies, all of different kinds of IPs, and right now they say that, oh yeah, we bought too much, we got to sell and lay people off. So yeah, it's a hard year, both in finding time to play all those games and hearing all the news.
But that's very interesting when you say that, like the scaling of it. Looking at that, I mean, with the example of kind of like Epic Games going out there with the success, of course, with Fortnite, with the follow up going into the different industries like architecture, like the movie industry. Microsoft is also pushing very hard to kind of like scale, incredibly consolidating. Do you think that is the best kind of like healthy way that we're going down the route at the moment, especially since there's so many bad examples that we can look at?
Yeah, like I think Capcom CEO has got a point. Like recently in the interviews, he said that there were different companies that were trying to buy Capcom. Some of the companies were were in the talks for Capcom to buy them. And he was like, no, we want to scale out organically. We want to hire people, train them, and, be in the know and just scale without buying those different companies, because it's it's a really complicated process to integrate them into their pipelines, flows, engines, and stuff like that. And it seems over the past few years, it looked like Microsoft will be up there, with all of the giants. And okay, they are buying a lot of different companies. They've bought like Arcane, the whole Bethesda, right? And people were like, okay, we may have to wait another 5 to 10 years to see the games that will be out on Xbox, but they will be great. Well, 2023, Redfall from Arcane, which is undercooked, is putting it very nicely. There's Starfield, which is really great Bethesda game, but still it's Bethesda game and it's kind of lacking in many different departments, at least for me. And it seems like, okay, they've bought all those different companies. They are scaling up when it comes to number of people and number of projects, but they do not have full grasp on what's going on inside their own company.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at Bethesda, because that's an interesting one. So Starfield, what is your general impression about, I know I'm starting in the middle of it, in between. Here's the funny story, right? Everyone thought Baldur's Gate 3 would have a hard time in between Cyberpunk and Starfield. Yep. I think Starfield is the one that has a hard time. And that's, in general sales, that might be a different story, absolutely. But let's talk about what we have as gamers delivered. What are we seeing here? Yeah.
I have played only like few hours, maybe like between 10 and 20 hours of it, but I feel it's one of the Bethesda game ever. And that's all I have really to say. Like, I remember when I first played, or I of course completed Morrowind. I have completed Oblivion. I've played Skyrim, and I've played for like 100 hours. And then I was like, oh yeah, okay, this game is like a to-do list. You just check boxes, and the lore stuff is great, but the story, the main story, is like kind of meh, right? And now I've started playing Starfield, and I feel like it's a like dated design. Like Skyrim released 12 years ago, something like that, almost 12 years ago, and it felt new and like exciting. For Starfield, it's like, oh yeah, it's exciting because it's in space. Okay, theme is really good. The execution is kind of okay, but the whole gameplay feel is like so dated. And like you mentioned, Baldur's Gate and Cyberpunk and Starfield in the middle. You play Baldur's Gate, you've got all those great like companions, you've got great main story plot, you've got voice acting, like everything just clicks, right? You've got Cyberpunk, which should be released now, not 3 years ago in this state, right? And Starfield is out there, and it just a mediocre game.
Yeah, and this is the same thing for me. I've been with Bethesda games since Morrowind, actually, and looking at back in the days. I mean, I think that was still 90s, right, or the early 2000s, when they released Daggerfall, and when you kind of like compare it, it was this huge leap. From the concept already in Daggerfall started into what Morrowind, and then in its full fruition, Skyrim became. But here's one funny thread that I always find so amazing, and it just shows kind of like the complacency in my eyes. What Bethesda, in a sense, is the water effect. Since Morrowind, not Skyrim, not Oblivion. When I played a lot of Starfield, I'm still doing so on my Let's Play, and when I'm looking at the water, it just tells me something about I get it. It's not the biggest priority, but it's just kind of like a metaphor for everything else. You just didn't take care. You just didn't continue to evolve the formula. It could be the same, but they just didn't. And that is for me something that I really, really am disappointed with, because I really thought with all the hype behind it, that and with the money behind it, with Microsoft, that Starfield really is an evolution of the Bethesda formula, and it is definitely not. Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, it's an evolution, but it's kind of slow, right?
Yeah.
They've like, okay, when it comes to like physics simulation, like word persistence, the sheer scale of the game, which is one of the main selling points, right? They are doing great. But in many other departments, like cutscenes, dialogues, all those systems, it feels kind of the same. It's like one of the first missions in Starfield, when you go out to this like biolab with space pirates. You're like, okay, space pirates, laser guns, stuff like that. I remember I was exploring the location, pretty nice, like, narrative design where you find some emails, some like, some capsules. It was really good. But then first encounter with space pirates, two of them, they take out laser guns, and one of them fire axe. And he just charges at me. And I was like, okay, am I playing Skyrim in space? Because it feels like that. And he even dropped laser gun.
Oh my God.
So why? It felt so out of place that my immersion was broken just like that.
I can imagine. And because here's now the funny thing, because you have a stark contrast now. This was the same problem, I think, with Cyberpunk 2077, where it was very emergent break. It's totally fine if you have fantasy games where things drop, right? And you increase your armor and you increase kind of like your damage output. But it always felt wrong in Cyberpunk 2077 because with all the advancement, it should be kind of like something different, how you put up armor. And you kind of, it's the same thing with, I sometimes also feel with other sci-fi, but specifically with Starfield, especially with all those suits, I would love that you could extend it. It's just basic kind of like one suit and you never can extend it. It's not a modular design. It's just the simple, same formula. So, you kill enemies, something drops. Oh, they need armor. Well, it's sci-fi, so it's a spacesuit. Rather than push it a little bit further, push it like I really like the shipbuilding part. They did a really great job there in terms of the idea of it to allow it. And I would wish for they would have done that also with spacesuits and going further with that. Yeah.
Yeah, like I totally understand. It was one of my main gripes with Cyberpunk when it came out first. Like the whole perk system, which wasn't exciting, like 1% increase in stats. It's not that great, right? But all of those systems, they felt like they were taken from The Witcher 3 and just adapted for Cyberpunk and not created for Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
And it just feels out of place. And in case of Starfield, you can feel that's the same engine, same creation engine. Of course, there's some like Unreal Engine interoperability right now that they are working on, but still it's the same engine and you can feel that.
Absolutely.
And another comparison to Capcom, which they are using their own RE engine, right? And they've released Monster Hunter, Resident Evil, Street Fighter, Exoprimal. So they are using that one engine for all those different games and experiences. And you can sometimes see the same animations, the same rigging, but they are still like, it's running great. It's on all platforms and they are still working on it and expanding it. For Starfield, I feel like, okay, they've added spaceflight, which is kind of nice, to be honest, right? Ship building, and the rest could be like, if it was RPG about pirates, not space pirate, but the normal pirates, and they could use the same engine and it would feel like the same game almost.
Yeah, but let's, so giving a lot of heat onto Starfield, but let's, if consider, let's take out, for instance, if that Cyberpunk, Baldur's Gate 3, or Zelda for that matter, did not release in this year, and Starfield would stand alone. What would we say now? What would your impression be? Is it because all those games have released in this year, similar or before Starfield, that it provides a little bit of a bad taste, and it's just actually just a game that we should have expected because it's Bethesda? Or what do you think about it? Is it because of that we look at from that perspective at the moment, from that lens?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, like if you are playing a lot of different video games and they are close to each other, you will be biased. There's just no way around that. And yeah, Starfield just released in a very awkward time between those big games that are really good, that really change things, like iterated on the core designs and are great, right? If they weren't there, to be honest, myself, I think that I would be still not that impressed by Starfield in the gameplay, like game design aspect. It was Dragon Age Inquisition, right?
Yeah,
we haven't talked about that once. Like the same problem, but the Dragon Age Inquisition at least had few months of to be in the spotlight.
true.
That it's because it released, it was fine game. No, not everyone loved it because it felt kind of like single player MMO. But they had 2 or 3 months before The Witcher released, and after The Witcher 3 released,
it was over.
Yeah, it was over. The game just, it was like 5 years older because another game released.
Yeah, and that is exactly how it feels like, because for me, playing Starfield and Cyberpunk at the moment at the same time, it's so contrasting. And Cyberpunk released before, so because taking away all the issues that they had, the story, the base game story was still there, the voiceover was still there, the music was still there, and the acting was still there. And I know that there is more effort in it, but it's such a distance in storytelling that what Bethesda delivers, as they say, a good story is not only about how it's written, right? It's also about how it's executed and having kind of like that momentum. And for me, Cyberpunk clearly just shows how it should have. It shouldn't be. I'm not expecting that kind of like level of Bethesda, but especially their dialogue is killing the game. And there is some voiceover. It's so monotone and kind of like long. And when emotions hit, when a character really wants to show emotions, it just doesn't come across. It just falls flat. And I think they missed a real big point there to make this kind of like this huge game, and being in between those narrative kind of like games just showed the weakness in my story. Will probably never be Bethesda's biggest strength, in my opinion. I think it will always be the modding community, the extension of what it allows others to do. I think it will be never an amazing narratives. Yeah,
it's always like, the lore of the world and the sheer like size of the world that's given out to players. But that's right. Like, I think it was in Mass Effect. They were like, BioWare was talking about their approach to storytelling and cutscenes. And, while I was trying out Starfield, I played it for like 4 hours. And then I played first half an hour of Cyberpunk from scratch because, patch 2.0, and I wanted to finish that game because I never did, to be honest.
Oh my God. Why?
Because it was so broken.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had many problems, but it was like, in Starfield, most of the cutscenes, they feel flat and like this thought, reverse thought, reverse thought. Nothing really happens ever.
Yeah.
And just, flat delivery. In Cyberpunk, first like few minutes when you start as a nomad, right? You stare into like, your own reflection in the mirror. You just snap back your nose. You drink something, and everything is in motion. From like, first seconds, everything is in motion. You start, you walk, you are, in the middle of the story. In Starfield, it's like, oh yeah, this game is about great expanse of space, boundless possibilities. So you will start in a mine, and we'll show you a tutorial for how to mine, like, the basic basic deposits. And okay, do you have like spare 10 hours to go through the whole intro? Oh yeah, okay, you can start the real game after 10 hours.
Yeah. And that is, again, this excuse, but that's funny. We had a talk about this excuse, the game gets better, right? Especially one of our favorite game, Final Fantasy XIV. Yeah. We always say that too, right? For us. But I think the main difference here is to say that it is all about execution, because I think that Bethesda really missed the point. I think the beginning could have been slow. It is, again, just it feels all monotone, especially right in the beginning. You have the zoom in into a face, and you immediately know this is a Bethesda game. Now, this is a good thing. It can be a good thing, but because expectations were so high, you immediately sucked us into, oh, okay, I will expect the same now, because it's just the same Oblivion zoom in since forever. I don't know, when did the game release back in the days?
Oblivion? I'm not sure. I only know release date of Skyrim because it was like 11/11/11.
Ah, yeah, true. Yes.
Yeah, but they've, like, the way they were hyping up the game, and that's the next step in Bethesda games, and it's step in place, really. Like even Mass Effect. The point I was trying to make before, that they've got this approach to ABC tier like content in main story. So it's like, if it's a main happy path of the main story plot, you will have cutscenes that are full of action. There's like, gestures, better voice acting, better like face capture technology and stuff like that. A bigger budget really thrown at those cutscenes, because they are in the main path, and people will 100% hit them, and they need to know that it's like high quality game, right?
Yes.
There's the B tier where there's like bigger side stories, or some bigger optional content where there's not as not as big budget as for the A tier, but still they put some some effort into that. And then there's C tier where it's like totally just generated shot, reverse shot.
Yes.
For Starfield, I felt like it was C tier all the way.
Yeah. To a certain extent, I must say, here's the big joke, right? There is one quest that I started. I wanted to focus on the main story, and then I started a kind of like a side quest with one of the factions. And here's the funny thing, because it has kind of like this horror kind of like scenario going on with kind of like a monster looming around in this world, which I totally hate. I hated it immediately. Because I'm like, that's not what I was in for. I was here for star exploration, but guess, hey, there's also monsters out there. But here's the joke. The zoom in with the faces really worked well. It really worked well. And the voiceover of the people, or at least that one person that was your main quest kind of like giver, really worked well. It just suddenly worked well. But this is exactly, for me, that's by accident. They used the right tools, kind of like the right cinematic by accident, because it worked very well there. Because kind of like the zoom into face just kind of like enhance kind of like that situation.
Yeah, there are like people just that they've got ideas about how to do that with a limited tool set, and sometimes it's like that in games. Like you play a shitty video game, right? And then one of the parts is just like polished to the extreme because it was a passion project for some people. Right?
Yeah, it was. So you said something really well with Mass Effect, right? This is all, especially, well, all three of them. The first three, the trilogy, you really can see the kind of like execution of it. And I think they took really care about, and again, this is so funny because I think a lot of people have already heard that, how much time they took care about the eyes, right? The eye shade, or how important that is to bring it over, but also the whole cinematic approach that they use, and they build tools around it. And I mean, I think they used Unreal Engine 3, correct? So they had certain tools they could extend with already back in the day. So that is something that surprises me just overall with Bethesda games, that they just don't go into it. But I mean, we have bashed enough with Starfield a little bit. Not to say it's a bad game; it's still a good game. But in the content, it's a fine game. To be very clear, for me personally, I feel still disappointments into that game because it just didn't provide what one would expect. Moving on, Baldur's Gate 3, the big one. So, be honest, really honest, Izzy. Did it surprise you?
Well, I've played early access, so I knew what I was going into. But even though I played early access, when I launched the like full game for the first time, I was like, oh man, they've changed so many things since early access. Like, I've played a week ago just to prepare myself, and it's almost totally different game, and it's so good. It's just so good. Nobody like even Larian, right? There was this whole drama about leak of internal Microsoft emails, where Phil Spencer said that, oh yeah, we won't be fighting for Baldur's Gate on Game Pass because it's a niche game. They won't sell well. They're like really small. And then Sven from Larian said, oh yeah, like I totally agree. We couldn't even dream about being so successful with Baldur's Gate. But still, it's here, and it's all of the like different pieces out there. They just fit so perfectly. Yeah. It's so smooth experience.
Absolutely. It was the same for me. I played also early access. And when I started Act 1, I was like, okay, this is, and it's not about how the tutorial started, right? I expected there was change. It just felt smoother, different. And it was a big step up from what I have experienced all early access on. Remember where I started early access on Stadia, just to say, The reason why I bought Stadia is to test Baldur's Gate 3. That doesn't exist anymore, so it has been a long time. But going into that, do you think it's fair to say what a couple of other developers were saying, that, well, they had enough time, they had long enough early access, and they had a strong Dungeons and Dragons IP, which the whole world knows, or that's at least their argument. And also, they have the tool sets and the experience already making the Divinity, the original Sin Divinity. Do you think that is fair to say, in contrast of how long Cyberpunk 2077 took until its initial release and Starfield?
It's kind of hard discussion because the whole developer flows for the whole development flows for those three games were totally different, right? And I get it that yeah, I guess a lot of people on the internet, they were just reading the headlines, not reading into what people really said.
As we do.
Yeah, but and I kind of agree with the developers that it's that it's hard to really compare Baldur's Gate 3 with other games that have released, because just like you said, people that were remote first after the whole reorg and stuff, not critical success, but I mean the financial success, I guess, of Larian. But they've got great engine, great people, time, and it was baking in early access for 3 years now, something like that. So totally different process, but we should judge other games and compare them to Baldur's Gate, because they did so many things just right.
Correct.
They weren't no shitty DRMs, no microtransactions, no stuff at first. I remember first articles about Baldur's Gate 3 were okay, big studios can make really good video game that do not prey on the microtransactions and monetization of current AAA model of other games, and people were judging Baldur's Gate because of that. And after I've played it, it was no, it's great game, and then as a cherry on top, it's great experience for the players, and no current day shenanigans, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me personally, so me having worked in games production in production roles, for me, the one thing that stands out is, because you're completely right, but where I would disagree with everyone is because it's about leadership. Because having really made, in the Corona crisis, where a lot of them struggled, and yes, of course, circumstances matter, money matters, obviously, but leadership matters as well. And how they set up the pipes, did remote first. And hey, a lot of people argued there were 300, 400 people, and that's hard to do, right? A lot of big companies struggled. Blizzard struggled as well to have that shift. And so for me, what stands out is good leadership, good production leadership that made this happen. And I'm pretty sure, even though knowing the internals, I'm pretty sure a Larian developer or developers will definitely kind of validate that, because from the outside, and I would love a talk, because production talks at those games convention are most of the time boring, right? Most of the time they're not cool at GDC and stuff like that.
Yeah, but, all the cool stuff happens before, behind closed doors.
But in this case, I really want to have a couple of those production guys talk about the process, how they dealt with it, how they employed, what the thought process is also about, the automation behind it, the tool set that they built, how they refined it, and how they executed. And also, I'm pretty sure what challenges that they faced, where they failed. It would be a godsend if somebody from Larian at whatever game convention would talk about it, because I would definitely listen to it. Because for me, working in production, it is absolutely something that I want to learn from, because I'm really sure that is one of the core things that made the difference, with other factors accounted for. That's the reason why I sometimes a little bit disagree with kind of this hard notion, because then I will quickly point out, well, if it's then with all those circumstances so easy and tick those boxes, why are we not talking about Diablo 4 here and Blizzard? No, I'm just making a point. We will not talk about it because it's not, because to be very frank, Starfield, Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk 2077, and Zelda in the ranks of AAA, I think they're comparable. Diablo 4 is kind of like a little bit of a joke in between, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, like I fully agree with Yahtzee from Zero Punctuation. Because when I've seen his review of Diablo 4 and he said it's a great game to just play in the background when you are listening to podcasts.
There you go. Listen to our podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Just, if you'd like, you can play Diablo 4 on Steam right now, even.
Yeah.
And
we're not sponsored by Blizzard, by the way.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, if Bobby Kotick gave me some of his money, I would still not say good things about Blizzard and their leadership.
True. Because it's down to leadership, correct? Because it's really down to leadership. And that is something that I find very interesting about Baldur's Gate. But anyway, moving from a little bit there, what has been, I think, the most impressive for you with Baldur's Gate 3 overall? When it comes to you just looking at it, playing early access, what was kind of like, if you need to pinpoint like 3 things, what were the 3 things that really made this for you kind of like a home run, as you call it in baseball?
Characters. Like, not the specific characters, but like all characters. Voice acting, character design, both like visual and narrative, and, everything. It just clicks. It just like, it's one complete package. You start with some characters and you're like, oh yeah, okay, they are kind of edgy and that's it. Nothing else. Like Shadowheart, right? At first glance, you would say, oh yeah, okay, she's just edgy princess, right?
Yes.
But then you start talking to her, you start like, visiting different locations, and, you get more and more insight into like her story.
Absolutely.
And you're like, oh yeah, wow, yeah, it's kind of, it gets deeper every time you speak with her, right?
Absolutely.
Another one, gameplay is super smooth. Like UI UX is not that great. First time user experience is, if you do not know how D&D 5 works and how Divinity Original Sin works, you will have lost a hard time at first.
Yeah.
But then once you get used to it, it's like, oh yeah, okay, I've got this here, this there. You can mix and match, all those different little touches and changes to the core rules from D&D, just to make it more fun inside video game.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, as you know, I play a lot of pen and paper. I have played a lot of 5e. Now we're playing more Pathfinder 2e. And for me, it was easy. Absolutely. It's just opening a game. Okay, pretty clear. But yeah, I figured it is hard to build a UI. And I must say, here's the one thing that I will always clearly say, even though it's unpopular. The system, the rule set that Original Sin 2 has is for me better than Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I believe the combat system that they built in Original Sin 2 is a much better system than 5e can ever provide.
Only in the context of video games, right?
In the context of video games.
Yeah.
Because in pen and paper, 5e, Pathfinder 2e obviously works very well. But in the context of video games, I still believe that was a much more superior system with the action points and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's more gaming.
But it's like, it was a system designed for video games. And here D&D was adapted. So
correct, yes. And it was a great adaptation. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I remember playing Temple of Elemental Evil. It was like D&D 5.e. And it was the encounters. It's a funny story because it was a game developed by 2 different companies, and counters and the fights combat systems was developed by one company, and another one was implementing exploration and other stuff. Exploration was broken as hell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was It was bad. Pathfinding, bugs in quests, many different issues. But combat was great. It was 1-to-1, representation of 3.5e in video game, and it was awesome. And it gelled really well. But of course, it was tabletop RPG. So even though it was one perfect representation of TTRPG, it was like, yeah, okay, it would feel better, if something was changed.
Yeah. Definitely. But it's always hard to adapt those. I get it. But I also get it that you want. I think there's soon a Warhammer CRPG out pretty soon in December. We're looking forward. I have a friend, huge fan. So I'm not into the world, but I will definitely check it out because it's from the studio that did the Pathfinder CRPGs.
You're talking about Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader?
Yeah. Yes, I think. Yeah. Yes, I think. Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking really forward to that one. Yeah.
Yeah. About Pathfinder, my main issue with Pathfinder Kingmaker is because Pathfinder first edition is 3.75e of Dungeons and Dragons, right? And it's all the pros and cons of this system are present in the game because and I wanted to finish that game, but in the latter half of the game, it's hyper optimization. You have to be a munchkin to play this game.
Yeah, it bogs down. It totally bogs down. It bogs down totally. But I'm not out of the grip here. What is the second thing that you liked about Baldur's Gate 2? The second.
Wait, there are already two things: characters, gameplay, and third thing. It's smooth as hell. The experience is you feel everything was made with the same amount of attention, be it side quests, main quests, locations, sound design, encounter design.
Yes,
everything is that's how AAA games should feel like. Not buggy messes, not being prompted to go into the microtransaction store, no something coming in the future stuff, roadmaps, but this whole complete package that you can play from start to finish and feel it's so well made. It's hard to say that in close that out in one sentence.
Yes, but I know how you could close it down. As Todd Howard said, it just works.
Yes. Oh, Todd, tell me sweet little lies.
Yes, tell me sweet little lies.
It just works. You just need 20 gigs of patches and mods.
And it just works. Well, Izzy, thank you so much. I mean, we're already at the 40 hour. I had many other questions. Maybe we can do this another time again. I think we have so much to talk to. But thank you so much for being here and talking to us. So
thanks for having me.
No worries. And thank you to all who listened, and have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.